I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, Eric Chemi. Today, I'm joined by Lydia Dishman, senior editor at Fast Company. I love your LinkedIn post because you said you're about me. You said 98% of you are here to pitch me a story or an op-ed, and then in all caps, you said, "Do not try to call, text, or DM me. Just kindly send me a brief email, no more than 5 sentences, and I'll take a look." So, Lydia, thank you for joining me. Tell me, what is your inbox like every day? What have you already been looking at this morning?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for making a note on that. I feel like I can't disseminate that particular nugget of information widely enough, so I appreciate the little shout out to that. I've been on duty since 6 a.m. Eastern. That is my typical day. I do a variety of things in my senior editor role, but just for anyone who's listening out there, I know my title is a little bit confusing because it's Senior Editor of Growth and Engagement. And at other companies, other media properties, growth and engagement usually signals email marketing, consumer marketing, any sort of product that is actually trying to work to get more readers. That is not what I do. I am an editor first and foremost, as in I am looking at pieces and editing them for publication. So that is sort of the be all and end all of my job. And starting at 6 a.m., the reason is that another part of my job is to drive news stories. We don't have an editorial staff that handles breaking news. So the way that we do it is we pull from Associated Press and Reuters, and the person that's looking at what is most relevant to our audience every morning to get the freshest stories in there is my personal self. So that's one piece of my job. And then we flip over to editing contributed content that is by people across industries. I'm loath to use the term thought leadership, but it does fall under that bucket. And so once I got all of the breaking news stories in the pipeline, then I switched over to that part of the job. And that's what I've been doing for the last 5 hours.
The last 5 hours. When do you end then? I assume you end a little bit earlier then if you started so early.
One would think, however, one would be incorrect. I go pretty much until 5:30 Eastern. With a minimal break for a sad desk lunch. I do not recommend this practice to others. Please set better work-life boundaries.
Or is the company making you do this, or are you the one saying, I'm okay with these hours?
No, we have an outstanding culture at Fast Company and Mansueto Ventures in general, and people are able to be flexible as they need. I just know how I work best, and this allows me to give myself a little bit of time to catch my breath, like say on a Friday afternoon when I do not schedule any meetings after lunchtime, so that I can sort of exhale and figure out where I'm going next. And that deep thinking work is where I draw the line.
What's your breakdown of time you get to spend individually versus time that you are in meetings, either that you've set up or someone above you is saying you have to be in this meeting? What percentage of your day is, let's say, let me call it real work versus I'm just sitting in a meeting?
We are actually pretty good as a team to figure out what meetings we need to be in and what are other things that could be an email. And we do have a standing edit meeting every day, but they are very short and very focused. We do have larger ideas meetings twice a week. Again, that's kind of held to 30 minutes. So, it really varies from day to day. Some days it's just an hour of meetings. Other days it's back to back with a checkerboard of obligations. But I try really hard not to schedule things back to back to give myself a little bit of breathing room in between time, because got to tackle that inbox. That is very important to me.
How many emails do you think you're getting in a day? I think in my time as a reporter, I was probably getting just pitches, 100 to 200 pitches a day. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. I've been really vigilant at trying to educate people who are pitching me so that I'll get less stuff that is just not something that I would ever consider. When I was a reporter, I would get things, for example, like, I used to cover travel a million years ago, and I managed to stay on someone's list somewhere. And don't you know, 15 years later, I'm still getting travel pitches. So those I will take the time to say, I no longer cover this area. Please take me off your list. And that has helped winnow it down. So maybe from 200, we've gotten down to, 75 to 100 per day, which to me feels manageable given how I'm working.
And you're nice enough to write that back. I would just do a block. I would just say block sender or block the entire domain name. I wouldn't spend the time to write back to say, don't write me anymore.
Well, I have a little bit of a hack, which is I have a number of templates that it's not automated per se, but I'm the automator. So I will scan it really quickly and then dump in a template. And those of you out there who have gotten a template, you can tell what it is because it's pretty generic. But I feel like that's better than just sort of having it go into the void, not answering, because I know that's a strategy some people use, and no judgment there. Or blocking, because you never know down the road if somebody, comes up with a different angle or something like that. Like, I want to keep my options open.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear your perspective, right? It's good to hear different kinds of perspectives because everyone is operating in a different way.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wouldn't have had a template. I would have just been block. That's it. Block. That's it. And block the whole domain. And I took the chance that, hey, maybe someone else at their firm would have had a good story pitch, but I'm just not going to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
So there was enough. Like you said, you still get 75 others as it is.
That's very true, but I am always looking for the nugget. And anybody who has heard me speak on this before is, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm always trying to advance the conversation. And just like it was in Glengarry Glen Ross, where they said, always be closing, I'm always be advancing the conversation.
ABA.
Sort of, yeah. If you want to make it an acronym, I should trademark that or at least hashtag it.
Yeah.
But there sometimes is some nugget that will come through for me and it'll spark another idea, or it'll be the thing that I'm looking for that can do exactly what I'm looking to do, which is advance the conversation around a topic that may have been beaten to death already at this point.
Can you give an example like today? Do you have your inbox up right now? What's something that you've already seen today that you thought, I like this. This actually clicked. This made sense. It's something I want to work on.
I don't. I don't today. But I have a feeling that there are a couple of things in there just scanning the subject lines. And honestly, I can't stress enough how important the subject line is to capture attention. I want to ask you, how many of them are you open? Let's say of the 70, let's round to 100. So we use like even percentage of the 100. How many do you even open? How many do you read past the first sentence? And then how many do you respond to? Like, because it's, that pyramid by the end of it is probably very few that get your full attention. That get my full attention. Yes. I look at everything. I open everything, okay, and I respond to everything that I see. Yes.
That's impressive.
People say that, and I just really subscribe to this philosophy that you never know what you're going to find, and it may be just the thing, and otherwise, it's an education for somebody on the other end to say, "I'm all set on this topic for now," which is a classic template line that I have. And so they understand that, like, okay, enough about the ethics of AI, for example. Like, we are all the way past that. We know we need guardrails. We know we need to adopt it responsibly. So thanks to all the CTOs out there who want to get their name in the media, we need to go beyond that.
So what are you looking for? That's a good example. So everyone who's behind, let's say, a couple years on this now, say, hey, my CTO wants to have his ethics of AI, whether it's white paper or quote or thought leadership, whatever it is, and you're all set. but there's something that you're looking for, right? What are you waiting for someone to say that you would say, okay, let's do that?
At this point, with that particular example, it makes sense to me to have somebody weigh in on the challenges that they had. So everybody's coming in with these broad theories, big pronouncements, but in practical application, how does that work? What do those guardrails look like? What actually worked for your company? How are you juggling the idea of, for example, generative AI in an application where you might be feeding, unknowingly so, a lot of your company's intellectual property? So, it's an obvious example in media because you wouldn't, for example, upload, a journalist's report into ChatGPT just as it is, and say, okay, like give me a summary, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just sort of pulling straws here, but that's the kind of thing where I think that people don't really understand the implications of what maybe individual contributors or first year, second year managers might be using it for. And that's the piece of the conversation that would be really valuable, I think, to readers. And that appeals to a more general audience than just the chief information or chief technology officer. That's what trade publications are for. We have a magazine that more broadly appeals to a variety of leaders at all rungs of that corporate ladder. So let's try to help them understand what to do next based on what you've learned.
I think about, yeah, if someone said, we tried guardrails and it didn't work, or, something that we made a mistake, at least there's something actionable, specific. Here are the mistakes that we made. But I think a lot of companies, they don't want to share their mistakes, for example, but I think mistakes would get more coverage.
I think that, and I said this at the Advertising Week panel I was in a couple of weeks ago, if we are really going to beat the drum of failure is good, mistakes are learning opportunities, then we actually have to share those mistakes that we make. Let's be transparent and say, sure, I made that mistake. Here's what we learned from it. And we have had even CEOs weigh in on, I tried this and it was terrible. And here's what we learned. So you actually do have an opportunity to not only show your people that this is okay, that we are normalizing imperfection, but you have an opportunity to help others. I say pay it forward if you can.
Right, right. I know one of the topics that you work on is work life.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I can tell, I think you're in a home office and not in an office, I think, and so am I. And I think recently about the news out of Amazon where they had that employee town hall and it says, hey, if you don't like this 5 days a week, you can just go work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that play into your mind? Because I'm sure there's going to be a buzz of stories that I know you're already getting and will continue to get. And that's going to be one where I could see you saying, I'm all set on this topic now. What are you looking for to advance that conversation? As now here we are closing in on 5 years since the pandemic began.
Mm-hmm. And have we learned nothing? I am at home. I work from home on Mondays generally. That is sort of my heads down, start the week on the right foot and get as much done without the distraction as possible. And not that the office is an unwelcome distraction. I really enjoy it. I'm an extrovert. I know that people feel differently about having people stop by their desk, but I love it. I also have a very long commute. And so it's really helpful for me to not have to do that at least once a week. I'm in the office, not because it's mandated, but it's my choice to go in Tuesday through Friday. Our employees are Tuesday through Thursday. That's the time where we're required to be in, and that is to increase collaboration. And so I think that everyone is sort of in the midst of figuring out what is the best thing to do. But I think that a lot of top leadership is concerned about productivity again. not because there's been any data showing that there is just a cliff of a drop in productivity. No one's in free fall, but I think that there is the nostalgia factor for the good old days when everybody was in the office. And this is just my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for my employer, but I get the suspicion that there is the ROI factor. We are leasing these buildings, we're offering these spaces, which are not an insignificant expense and overhead for a company. So perhaps there's a little bit of looking at the balance sheet and wondering what the cost benefit analysis is. And so therefore it's the knee jerk of, let's just bring everybody back in so we can justify this cost. Again, that's my personal opinion. What I would love to advance the conversation is to see some data around that. Does it really save the company money or increase the ROI if people are coming in instead of a hybrid scheme, if they are coming in 5 days a week? What happens to the remote people that they hired? Because during the pandemic, a lot of people went other places because they could, because they felt safer. What's happening with those people? Who knows? That's what I'd like to know.
I would love to know that as a data person myself, and someone who I think I'm more introverted. I think I get a lot more done at home than in an office. And for me, was people coming to my desk was always a distraction, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
But when you had nothing to do on those moments, let's say where there's no breaking news, it's just kind of whatever. Okay, let's go talk to friends. And I feel like so many of the friends I know in life in the New York City area are because I worked with them, that at home, I don't think you're making those friends, right? I don't think you can make as well of a friend of someone you've never seen in person if you're all remote. So I think even being an introvert, there was a lot of value in being there, but I could see the value on, okay, let's do it 3 times a week, right? From 3 to 5. Okay. But again, we don't have the data. We're speculating. I sound like someone that is pitching you an op-ed that has no basis than anyone else's op-ed, right? So I can see how it really quickly devolves into just your opinion, my opinion.
Yeah. And I do think that there would be some value, even if there isn't a broad study of 1,000 people or more, which is pretty much the gold standard. I think according to Pew, you need to have a representative sample. It's usually about 1,000 people. There's the value in the CEO saying, I did the numbers. Right. And here's why this works.
At least at our company, at this particular firm, we tried it. Here was our results. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking. Anybody have anybody brave enough to raise their hand and say, yes, we tried this and here's the ROI?
And again, like, here's the mistakes we made. Here's what we thought was good. Yes. Here's where we had to change our approach. Or you could see where the CEO said, I had this belief, but our performance indicated that I was wrong, or our data indicated that I was wrong. So I changed, even though that's not what I thought.
Like, yeah, and we had those on the 4-day work week. There was a raft of commentary on the 4-day work week, and there is data surrounding that. And we had people raise their hand and say, yeah, we tried this experiment. Here's how it worked for us. And that's really crucial, because 4-day work week, if you're just looking at it in very black and white terms, just the way that you would look at 5 days a week in person versus hybrid, there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. 4-day work week does not work for all companies, does not work for, say, a manufacturing line. Right. But what does work on a manufacturing line is the shift scheme. So that's sort of inherently flexible. And that's what we really need to sort of see more of, is how are you making the flex with the nuance of your particular company?
Yeah, and I do think part of it is, and we'll move off this topic, but I think it's personality driven. I think if you have a company that's full of extroverts, you might get different results than a company full of introverts. And I think different industries lend themselves to different kinds of personality or different job functions, let's say, within those industries. So yeah, we'll see if anyone hears this and says, oh, Lydia's telling me what I can get in with, but let's see if someone listens and actually follows that. Am I allowed
We'll
to ask?
see.
Maybe it reveals too much. I'm outside New York City. I'm in New Jersey. I think Fast Company's in New York. How far is the commute? Because I know people here in Jersey trying to get to Manhattan, and it's just awful. If you're transferring through Secaucus and getting to
Mhm.
Penn Station, and then you're taking the subway, it just take 90 minutes each way every day. Like, are you in that like 90-minute type of world?
It can be. On the best days, I can make it in just over an hour. But what I thought was hilarious was I live in the Bronx, but I'm in the outer reaches of the Bronx, so
Like
it's
almost the Westchester side of it, kind of.
ish, more towards the water in the
Yeah.
Northeast, and there isn't a subway line immediately near me, so it requires a bus to get to the subway to get from all the way northeast to all the way at the bottom of Manhattan. So because Fast Company's office is at Seven World Trade, so we're in the financial district. That is a long ride. We had an intern one year who was coming from Philly who was making it quicker than I was. It's like you could live 2 states away, and here's Lydia still
You
chugging
can live in the
along
same
on the
city or be in Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia person,
made it
that's
in
crazy.
quicker than I
Wow.
did. Yeah, absolutely. Which is on the best days, I have to laugh. And I lived outside of New York City, and I was a remote employee before remote was a thing. Um, I can say that I really miss being on the subway. And I missed it during the early days of the pandemic because that is a slice of humanity that I am really grateful to see every day with all the good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
But that's another conversation for another time. So you'll never hear me trash the commute just because I love it so much. And that's where I'm at.
So then talk about how did you get here? Anyone can look you up and see you've had different experiences, right? The travel work, the CBS work,
Mhm.
in South Carolina. So
Mhm.
you've done and freelancer. So you've done a lot of different things. How do you think that informs your decision making, or maybe your, how do I say, empathy for other people in different situations? Because I've been there, I've done that, I've worked on different kinds of beats. I get what you're trying to do. How do you think you've sort of grown into this role based on those experiences?
Well, I've had a long and very fortunate tenure in this industry. I really believe in journalism, and I believe in the fourth estate. And these are difficult times to be a journalist and be in media. But that said, we soldier on. Um, I started really as a child. I did my own newspaper for my block in the Bronx, and I continued on. And I was a freelancer for a lot of years simply because I lived in South Carolina, and I was a stringer for some papers up here, and I worked for some state magazines down there, and so I kind of cobbled it together. And being in the industry as long as I've had, I'm really not a reporter anymore. I'm pretty much almost exclusively an editor. The empathy piece is so central to everything that I do, simply because I understand that it is a very hard thing to do, to wake up every day and report the news, especially in challenging times such as we're in. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is we're all trying to do a good job. And some people are better at it than others. No judgment again, varying degrees of success. But I do feel like it's on me to take the time and offer something that somebody can learn from if I'm able to do it. So I can be empathetic. So that's why I answer all those pitches that come across my desk in hopes that it'll be helpful to somebody. That's not to say that I'm always nice about it. and I can get grumpy, and people who know me for a long time can definitely attest to the fact that I can be a curmudgeon because I'm like, you got one job, why aren't you doing it? And that is something that people have heard me say over and over. But I do feel like empathy is a really important part of it. This is hard work. There's no way around it. And so I feel for you because I've been in the trenches myself.
You touched on this just a little bit, the changing media landscape. How is Fast Company adjusting their business model? Because we've talked to other journalists and it's like, okay, well, because of, let's say, AI, we don't think Google's going to pick up our stories as much or the way people will find us. So we're focusing more on events or on sponsorships or using our brand in different ways. What changes have you noticed in the time that you're there, in the time that you've been there at Fast Company? And how is it maybe affecting, we'll do this kind of story, but maybe we won't do that kind of story, or maybe, there's an advertising partner that we want to keep happy, or these guys are coming to an event that we're hosting, so let's put their op-ed. Like, are there things like that are going on?
Well, I mean, I would say that Fast Company has always covered innovation. And so I like to think that we are innovative just because we're following the example of so many brilliant leaders in the field, in various fields. I don't know, I can't really speak to the business model because that's not my purview, but I do know that just from casual observation, you can see this from the outside, we've always been a certain kind of brand, and we've always been diversified in print, in digital, and in events. And just like a lot of other properties, we do have advertorial. So we do have sponsors in that way. I think that really the changes really are more subtle, and that, how we do our events, for example. I know that at the Innovation Festival, and this was something that I was partly responsible for, was to offer our attendees workshops. There are a lot of conferences that you go to where it's just a sort of sit back and take the information in kind of experience. And we wanted to offer two different kinds. We want that, but we also wanted to give our attendees the opportunity to really dig into a topic and really work on it, brainstorm or turn to somebody else and kind of figure out how to solve a thorny problem. And so we had a bunch of those. And I think that, given the ones that I programmed and ones that I just sat in, were extremely successful. People are hungry for those kind of experiences. And even the introverts, I think, were kind of drawn out in those particular forums because you had an opportunity not just to network at a cocktail party, but just to really talk to somebody and say, like, who are you and what are your problems and how can I help you? And that is really resonating. So
how can I help you? I like that phrase because we talk about that with, let's say, some of our clients having been a reporter. I have said to them, look, reporters and editors, they're not looking to your company they're not looking to help your company. They're looking for you to help them, right? They're looking for you to help them tell a story. In the sense, like, if I'm a reporter, you're an editor, you're trying to get someone to help you, help Lydia write a good story or assign a good story or find a good story, not tell Lydia to help you get your company coverage, right? It's the opposite way. And I think a lot of professionals are missing that it goes the other way, that you're the one who's overwhelmed. You're the one that's overburdened, but you're pointing at me. Maybe I'm getting this wrong.
No, I don't think you're getting it wrong, but I think there's nuance there, and it is really important to talk about this. So I'm glad that you brought this up, because especially with agencies, PR agencies, comms execs, and journalists, I always see this as a symbiotic relationship. We just really need each other. That's one. Two is, I would argue, again, my opinion, not that of my employer, but given my years of experience, I feel justified in this opinion. I'm in the service business.
Servicing who? The readers?
The readers.
Who? Yeah.
Yes, the readers. And I think that it really helps to remind people of that, whether they're journalists, readers, or agency people. We are in the service business. We are here to serve information, and that comes in a lot of flavors. So if you come to my ice cream shop of journalism, you're going to be able to get, a triple float or a banana split with all of these things in it. And those things in it are thought leadership, gulp, we need a rebrand, Uh, first person takes as told twos. We need reporting that is on the news, so it's just the facts. And then we also need day 2, day 3 context stories, longer features. These are all the flavors that we are serving to the readers. And it is really important that whoever approaches me needs to have that in mind as well. It's not just about I'm burdened, because I chose this job. I make a choice every day. I get to come to work and I'm really happy about it. But what I am always in service to is what can I give the people who are on the other side of my screen, who are eager to consume this information and learn something and make informed decisions because of it. And that is really at the core.
I like that. I like the way you put that. I like the way you put that. Speaking of
Should
that,
I trademark that too?
Say it again.
Should I trademark that too?
I like that. You got some good. I was thinking, the other one you say ABC. I was thinking maybe it's CBA, like constantly be advancing. Maybe so it's not you're repeating the A. I was thinking about that. Speaking of topics, like you said, you're all set on certain topics. What are a couple of areas that you just feel like are overly saturated in terms of service to the readers? What are things that you just find the readers they're maxed out on this? I don't want to give them any more. What do you think are some topics that you think the readers are all set? Let's just move on from these things. But yet the media continues to keep pummeling them with it.
Well, I think certainly the question of implementing AI and fearing AI taking our jobs. I was writing about that, I don't know, 7 to 10 years ago. Obviously, in the last couple of years, we've seen a tsunami of generative AI that is a little bit unsettling to people who feel like that might take their job. So sure, we can talk about that. But again, it's like, okay, we know this already. What do we do about it? So enough with the don't fear AI. It's not going to take your job. It's going to give you time to be more creative. Fine. Now what? That's a huge one. The other one is that we've had, and this is more of a timely peg, is people are nervous about talking about politics in the workplace. And I would say there's been no fewer than 7 reports that all found the same thing, is that, people are nervous to talk about politics in the workplace. Leaders are nervous to take a stand. It's like, okay, we get it. It's challenging. We've always been nervous about challenging conversations.
But what if you got that 8th report that tells you the same thing?
Then I'm going to put my head in that wall over there. Just boom. But yeah, I got one on Friday. It was literally the 7th or 8th report on that. And I'm like, okay, the election is what, 2 weeks away? Like, what are we doing now? We need to sort of look beyond that. Do we talk about politics after the election is over? Are we going to have a conversation about what that's going to mean for our business? Sure. That's an interesting way to advance the conversation. Have you thought about what the different leaders would look like if they were president? What is that going to mean for your people, the customers you serve?
And on the flip side, and as you're touching on here, what you want to see, what are some areas maybe in the verticals that you work on that you feel like there's not enough being talked about, or I'm not seeing enough pitches, or I wish I could see more of X?
It's a kind of a tough one. Sometimes I don't know it until I see it, okay. But I am very interested in the concept of how the climate crisis is impacting underrepresented communities. And I think that there's a whole sort of subset that isn't being addressed on, and when I say subset, I mean angles on what does this mean for underrepresented and underserved communities. And we saw this play out in horrific terms with the last couple of hurricanes. And you can see what got pummeled and who actually lost their homes and how long it's taking for those communities to be rebuilt. I'm thinking about Asheville in particular because I used to live near there, but you've had that River Arts District, the the people, the artists in a community are always looking to move into a space that they can afford. And sometimes that means they'll move into like a warehouse space or something like that. And all of that got wiped away. What happens next? And so that's a piece of the climate crisis I don't think is being discussed enough, is what does it mean for underrepresented and underserved communities?
That's a good because I saw the reports, the visuals, and they went and they've shown here's what happened to the river arts community, and it's completely, it's zero. It's just nothing there, right?
Mm-hmm,
so that's not going to get fixed this year. That's going to be a multi-year, or do they just all move and just go somewhere else, right? Who knows what the answer is there?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I was going to end it, but I feel like that's sort of a downer way to end it.
Okay, so let's go for something forward-looking.
Okay, what are you most excited about this week? What's on your hot burner right now? Of this is a story we're working on right now that I can't wait to get out the door.
Well, again, a difficult question. I mean, look, I think more broadly, the thing that excites me and gets me going in the morning is change. And that is truly the only constant. And many sages have said that before me. But I think with change comes opportunity. And as long as you have opportunities, you have room for growth and room to change the world. If I'm going to sound idealistic and we want to end on a high note, but I really do believe this. I'm a cautious optimist, but I do believe in people. And I believe that change can bring about good things for people. And there are any number of people working on the world's most intractable problems right now who can make a difference and change the world for the better. So that's what I'm excited about. Let's see. Let's go.
And you can read all about them. You can read all about these world change makers in Fast Company.
Yes, you can.
Lydia, thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of how you're approaching this job and how you're doing it. So thank you for spending the time with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.